Sweden. The ruling power of the Counter-Strike world for well over a decade. How did this once great nation go from absolute rule to being usurped by their cousins in the south that speak half Swedish, half German, and 100% guttural nonsense? Hello, welcome back to another video. Now, today's topic is the Swedish Counter-Strike scene, which from Counter-Strike 1.6 to a few years into CSGO was one of the most dominant forces in all of esports. Now, it's gone down the toilet. It's not UKCS bad, but yeah, it's not what it used to be. When I first watching CSGO, Sweden were the nation to beat. NIP and fnatic were both realistically top 5, top 4 teams in the world, and fnatic were just beginning to build maybe the second era in professional Counter-Strike. As a young, bright-eyed Kenny S fan, I was terrified of these Swedish juggernauts. They won 4 of the first 6 majors in CSGO, as well as a whole score of other events that I just can't be bothered to list right now because it's quite a fucking list. However, from late 2015 to mid-2016, things changed. First, NIP fell off a cliff. Okay, maybe I exaggerate a little bit. Of all the teams to have ever fallen off a cliff in any sport, this might be the slowest descent, but it was still quite alarming to watch. Forest and Get Right were no longer the gods they had been at the end of 1.6 or at the start of CSGO, where they won rounds for fun. This, combined with Exist and Freiburg's gradual decline, meant they couldn't have Fiflaren around anymore. He just wasn't pulling his weight. This left them with a hole to fill. Now, they signed a number of different players to be their 5th, and none of them worked out. Being NIP's 5th was a poison chalice. You came in, you were expected to be great immediately, and more than likely, within 6 months, you were gone. By March of 2016, they were outside of the top 10. Fnatic's downfall, on the other hand, seemed far more sudden, but for different reasons. They started 2016 as the #1 team in the world. They had just won the 2 events to end the year, I believe, and then they won the first 2 coming into 2016, so they were on a massive winning streak of S-tier lands. But then they had a run of top 4 finishes in the middle of the year that left them wanting more. These weren't bad results. Any other team would love to have this much success, but when you win back-to-back majors and then 4 straight events, you start to get a lust for gold, and this just wasn't satisfying them. So, logically, 3 players left. A little different from most teams, where usually you see 1 player leave, but this circumstance was a little different. JW, Flusher, and Crims all left to go rejoin their former IGL Pronax in Godsent, alongside another former Fnatic player, Schneider. If you've never heard of Schneider, well, he's won a major. He won a major in 2013, and that's about it. You'll struggle to find any note of him outside of that. Now, this left Olofmeister and Dennis with 3 spots to fill on the roster, and not many options to fill it with. They went with Wenton, Twist, and Lekro. Now, you might know Twist and Lekro. You probably haven't heard of Wenton if you didn't follow very specific teams in Counter-Strike 1.6, and then some lower ranked teams early on in CSGO. So this new Fnatic and this recently created but also recreated Godsent were both kinda shit. By the time February 2017 came around, the team were all reunited in Fnatic. The experiment had failed. So that was the initial collapse of the Swedish scene. It was rather sudden, rather unexpected, but also, once you dug deeper, not too unpredictable. What was more shocking or worrying was what followed afterwards. NIP never really recovered from the collapse of the Swedish scene, but Fnatic on several occasions seemed to. After signing Golden to replace Olofmeister, Golden being a new IGL, the team did manage to hit #2 in the world halfway through 2018. They then had a great idea and replaced Lekro, who at this point had come in to replace Dennis in late 2017, early 2018. They replaced Lekro with Exist, formerly the IGL of NIP. They of course then took the IGL responsibilities away from Golden. Just when things were starting to work out, they decided, nah, it's time to fuck it up again. So they slowly got worse. They never won another significant event with Exist as the in-game leader, and Golden eventually took time away from the team for medical reasons. Since this mistake, they brought back Brolan, brought back Golden, looked pretty good, but never really made it back into the elite. NIP's path back since the collapse has been far less successful, but no less chaotic than Fnatic's. By March of 2018, the only remaining members of their major winning side in 2014 were Forest and Get Right. The team was taking chances on youngsters like Draken, Twist and Rez. They even brought in Lekro, but they were never able to figure out a winning combination or really figure out who their in-game leader should be. The team stagnated between 5th and 10th in the world, never being bad enough to fall into the lower tiers of CS, but never really being good enough to win big titles. Get Right was phased out of the team throughout 2019, everyone in the community was expecting him to leave to the point where he did, and then in January of 2020, Forest, the last of the old guard, left the Ninjas. The team was now comprised of, 3 youngsters, the not-so-young Twist, and Lekro as their leader. They never established themselves as a solid top 10 team in 2020, and eventually replaced Lekro with Hampus. In 2021, we've reached a point where NIP have crept quite far from the top 10, and things don't really seem to be picking up. Okay, this and this literally happened as I was making this video. They don't count. So what went wrong? Well, I've talked about what went wrong with the teams, but why were the teams not able to pick themselves back up? I mean, in CS 1.6, Sweden was a titan. Their teams won 11 majors and countless other big events. In CSGO, just after the end of 1.6, NIP had their ridiculous 87-0 streak. They won a major. Fnatic won 3 majors. I mean, where did all the talent go? Did the sun come out in Sweden and everyone started going outside? No, they're all still playing Counter-Strike. So what happened? So how come Denmark, who only won 2 majors in 1.6 and really weren't that impressive early on in CSGO, have this veritable buffet of young players to choose from, and Sweden are still developing their young talents? In a video I made back in November now, I explained how the majority of the Danish scene had come up playing under some kind of veteran in-game leader. This is an important aspect that was really missing in the Swedish scene. Most of the great Swedish IGLs from 1.6 retired at the end of 1.6, or at some point in its duration, and there were very few stepping up to fill their shoes in CSGO. Contrast this to the Danish scene where MSL, Fetish, Berry and Snappy were all still playing in the Counter-Strike 1.6 and Source scenes, and then transitioned into CSGO when that came around. This plethora of IGLs that were active in the Danish scene meant that young players didn't just have an abundance of skill, they also had experience as professionals and as a part of a structured team. This is a combination that really didn't exist for Swedish youngsters. Players who did have some sort of experience, Wenton comes to mind, really weren't good enough. Players with the skills, like Rez and Draken, were not ready for the higher levels of professional play, having only played in puggy teams with very little structure and low expectation. Okay, that's the past and the present, but what does the future hold? Surely it can't be getting worse, right? Well, Fnatic have recently looked like they're the closest to contention, but it looks like the legends of old are being phased out. Flusher has left, and in his place, they signed Jaquinho, who is an AWPer. Now that bodes ill for JW, as you know, he's also an AWPer. Crims is still around, and so the team isn't that far from being good. It's just a question of if Jaquinho has what it takes to compete at the top, and if whoever they sign in the place of JW will be able to actually bring something positive to the team. For NIP, it's a bit weird. They have many skilled players and are capable of beating top 10 teams, but never with any consistency. Maybe their new 5th will alter the balance and allow them to unlock the full potential of Nork and Plopsky, who have both been somewhat mediocre since joining NIP. Or maybe this team will be perennially disappointing. I hope not, for their sakes and for the sakes of Swedish Counter-Strike, but it's not been a great few years for the Ninjas. No matter what, it's going to take quite a lot of change for the Swedish Counter-Strike scene to ever return to its former glory. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment telling me your opinion on the Swedish Counter-Strike scene, or if you want to see me do another one of these videos for a different nation, leave a like if you enjoyed it, sub if you want to see more, and that's all for this one. Goodbye.